to a very special episode of the Experience Strategy Podcast with Joe Pine, the author of the now in print Get It Everywhere You Get Books book, the Transformation Economy book, Dave Norton, an experienced futurist, and me, an expert in behavior change and motivation, Aranza Savas. Thank you for being here with us to celebrate the launch of Joe's new book. We have been with Joe, I think, from the very beginning, the genesis of this idea. And it's just been such a joy to watch you consolidate the work, the research, the thinking around this, and to bring so much new clarity to readers about how to effectively create transformation and why creating effective transformation matters. So congratulations, Joe. How many books have you written now?
My daughter asked me that the other day, and I said 5 to 10, depending on how you count it. So you count
reprints,
all 3 editions of the Experience Economy. You count this anthology, So anyway, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Wow. Does it
but
ever
this
get
is
old?
The biggest one.
This is the biggest one.
I think it's even bigger than the Experience Economy.
Wow. And you're measuring bigness in terms not of number of pages, I guess.
No, it's definitely smaller than the Experience Economy. My publisher insisted that, attention times and all that today. No, in terms of potential effect, I think it will have a bigger effect, right? Because transformations are impactful. Transformations are time well invested. And so the amount of work that people will do because of this, I think will be even greater than the Experience Economy.
Wow. Why now?
So that's a great question. So thanks to you two, in no small part, why now? But, Transformation Economy was the last 2 chapters of the Experience Economy. And I always get a kick out of when people say, oh, it's great to get this new stuff. And I read the Experience Economy, but then they never realized it was there. So, well, you didn't finish the Experience Economy, right? Last 2 chapters. The rest of it was a Trojan horse. So I actually been asked for over 25 years, when are you going to write a full book on transformations? And I always said, well, 1, the world is not ready for it. And 2, I don't know enough about it. And read the acknowledgments at the back of the book where I talk about Stone Mantle's collaboratives as ways where I realized people were ready for it and help me learn enough about it. And I cite Dave in the book several times, particularly around jobs to be done on it, which is very helpful. So the world is ready for it. That's why it's important to come out now. It's even more ready than they were for experiences when the Experience Economy came out, I think, in '99.
What did you see, though, that was signaling to you this readiness?
Well, one, just the research that Stone Mantle did that said that people were talking about transformation. They were no longer sort of afraid of the word. It's still often a big, scary word, but and how they express it and seeing differently, doing differently, being differently. The World Experience Organization, founded by James Wallman, he says I co-founded. All I did was, when he called up, said, "Can I do this?" I said, "Yes, please." That was my co-founding. But when I talked to all of the through the campfires and the World Experience Summits, I recognized almost to a person, every experience designer in there talked about transformative experiences. Talk about how they want to do this, not just about memorable experiences. They want a transformative experience. I saw that coming out of COVID as well, when people increasingly wanted more than memorable. They wanted more meaningful experiences, as you guys have talked about for a long time, and more transformative experiences. So then the more I researched it and started getting into the writing of it, the more I learned about that. And one of the things I'll mention in that regard is in the original Experience Economy, we talked about transformations. I sort of had this idea that, hey, you just have an aspiration. It just appears. It's like the bluebird of happiness, comes down and says, boom, you want to aspire to something. And never really thought about where they come from. And so I did work on catalysts, came up with modeled catalysts. And the one thing I was surprised at is that probably the most prevalent catalyst for transformations is, in fact, trauma. Mm-hmm. That people have something happen in their lives. They have a car accident, they get cancer, they have a loved one that dies, they get fired, they retire, which for so many people is trauma because they don't realize what a difference it is. It's a metamorphosis. And so that was something that really sort of surprised me and so dealt with a lot. My editor at one point said, "You talk about getting cancer too much. And I counted it. I said, 4 times in 7 chapters. How is that too much?" So I still don't understand why she thought that was too much.
Yeah, it's interesting too. As I'm writing my book, one of the early chapters is on finding your purpose, and it is very much aligned with what you're saying here, right? So these are incredibly interconnected concepts that we find our purpose generally through trauma. And the closer in it is to us directly or to someone we care about or our next door neighbor, the more meaningful that becomes, right? Because
I think it's so beautiful, but it's not just, I have an individual purpose, right? I can tell you what it is, right? It's my purpose in the world is to figure out what's going on in the world of business and then develop frameworks that first prescribe it and then, or first describe it, then prescribe what companies can do about it, right? Short version is frameworks are us, right? That's my purpose in the world. And I talk in there about that. I think I even say what that purpose is. But also businesses need a purpose. Businesses need a meaningful purpose about why they exist in the world beyond making a buck, which is something that I stress a lot in the book. The first chapter introduces the notion of transformations through the progression of economic value. That's the through line through the experience economy. Second chapter talks about human flourishing. And we mentioned that in the last episode that we did that on longevity and that. And Dave talked about how the movement and positive psychology around that. And it just became so much more important in the writing to recognize that the entire raison d'etre of business, the reason business exists, is to foster human flourishing, to help people flourish in their lives. And they need to be a net contribution to flourishing in the world, or they're a racket and just should go away, right? And all those companies out there, and you know who they are, who are trying to addict you and get you just to spend time with them, and increase page views and all that sort of time, and all the AI chatbots that are coming out and that, right? They're rackets. They need to. It's morally wrong what they are doing. Right? And I get very strong in that chapter about it. And I talk about how there's 4 spheres of human flourishing or spheres of transformation. Either way you can go with it, based off of Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise, which is health and prosperity. Health and well-being, which gets a lot in that longevity thing that we talked about. Wealth and prosperity, having good lives. Prosperity is the end to which wealth is the means. Knowledge and wisdom, wisdom being the outcome of the knowledge that we have. And then there's one more that Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise can capture exactly what you're saying, Francis. It's purpose and meaning. It's a fundamental human need to have meaning in our lives, and gaining a purpose is the way to be able to get that. It's more important than any of the others.
Yeah. And for all of these companies that you're talking about, that's their origin story, ideally.
Yes.
Right? Some transformation that led to it. So Dave, I'd love for you to back us up a little bit to what came just before this. I joined Stone Mantle and the Collaboratives, was brought in specifically really to talk about transformation and to help guide that collaborative from a standpoint of behavior change and motivation. You, though, when we met, had already started really exploring meaning. And so can you talk about that transition from meaning to sort of elevating it into this transformation economy work?
Well, I love what Joe has done. One of the key things he talked about is that he builds frameworks. For a long time, I've argued that the number one thing that people want is meaningful experiences. And I still believe that there's a lot of markets out there for meaningful experiences. Joe, I think about transformations. You've taught us that they are an economic offering. And in some ways, there's a limited number of transformations that you can have. Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Just like there's a limited number of experiences that you can have, and meaningful experiences. But I think that as we move into more of a transformation economy, we're kind of expecting that a baseline is that you're going to get at least a meaningful experience out of something that's of value to you. And so we need to focus on meaningful experiences. We need to understand what they are. For companies that think that all they need to do is get people to recall them, to remember them. That's not enough, and it hasn't been for quite some time. We started the Meaningful Experience Collaborative, so we picked different topics to focus on, and we started the Meaningful Experience Collaborative in 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. And we're just kind of ramping it up when COVID hit. And then all of a sudden, everybody was talking about meaningful experiences.
Right.
So you had that experience, Aransas, of being able to go right back to the company you were working for and saying, hey, I've got like 6 different ideas here that we can go after. And that's what that program is designed to do, is it's designed to help you to think about the future. Now, we had no idea that COVID was going to hit. But, like that's...
What kind of futurist are you?
Yeah, exactly. But it turned out. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I am both a disciple of, an acolyte of Joe's work, and
contributor
I
too.
believe that things are going to head in a particular direction, and I do think that we're moving into a transformation economy.
One of the things I think that's important to note, though, too, that I really came to understand through working with the two of you, is that transformations are built on meaningful experiences. And so these are not separate things, but one of the things you talk about in the book, I believe, is why it is such a profound economic offering is because it has to be built on commodities and services and meaningful experiences. And it takes a lot of investment to build a truly transformational offering.
Yeah, it is at the top of the progressive economic value of commodities, goods, services, experiences, but it's so closely intertwined with experiences, as Dave is getting at, that we only ever change through the experiences that we have.
Right.
And you're all the product of our experiences, as the saying goes. So the question is, how do you take these memorable experiences and make them meaningful? I'll even add, I talk about transporting experiences, the one that give us awe or get into flow and transcendence and so forth. And turn them into transformative experiences. And given we're the Experience Strategy podcast, Experience Strategy should understand this. There's one framework, it's chapter 4 of the book, one framework that you need to use, really truly understand and embrace, right? Even if you ignore all the rest of it, right? To become transformative. And it's what I call encapsulation. And encapsulation is my term to stuff that people that do transformative experiences understand viscerally, but it's also been well documented academically. But basically, when you have an experience, you need to encapsulate it with preparation beforehand, reflection afterward, and integration on an ongoing basis, right? Those are the 3 key things. And so preparation primes through the experience. It gets you thinking about what the possibilities might be. If you don't have an aspiration coming in, it can think about, are there areas in your life that you've been thinking about or having issues with and so forth. Then you have the experience, and then ideally immediately you do reflection, which is looking back on that. What were the highlights of it? How did it make me feel? Did I see differently? Did I do differently? Do I want to be differently as a result? What might those possibilities be? And one of the things when the 3 of us were together at the Arrival 360 conference back in September on travel and tourism, that I said in one of the sessions that have now really impressed me, and I said it all the time, which is that reflection retroactively increases the value of the experience. Right? You want to talk about the experiencing self and the remembering self, as Danny Kahneman talked about. Well, think about the reflecting self, and then when you reflect on that experience, you cement in the memories. You make the highs higher. You think about the possibilities, and that just charges you in a way that you've just increased the value.
You make meaning too.
Right, exactly. You're making meaning out of that experience. And so, and then what most companies do, though, is they don't do the integration. They don't do the follow through. They don't ensure that transformation, whatever it might be, sustains itself through time. And that's the one thing to think about. The other 2 are fairly easy to do. Don't take a lot of time. Just, But integration is ongoing, and you need to think about how you might make that happen. And you see that, for example, with your Weight Watchers experience, that, that you've got to keep going. You can't just stop at some point and expect you to keep the weight off.
That's right.
Yeah. I think we have like models for how companies can manage integration. SaaS is a software model. Subscription is a perfectly good model. The number one reason why people don't integrate, or why companies don't support integration, is because they're getting paid for the event.
Right.
Whatever the event is. And then after the event is done, they don't get paid from that.
And that's what needs to change, is that you need to get paid on the demonstrated outcomes that your customers achieve. And those outcomes have to be measured over time. And that's another thing. That's so important. I talked about it in the first chapter, and I talked about it in the last chapter, with a lot of examples of companies that are charging for outcomes. As McKinsey just announced how it's increasingly do that with AI projects, because they're so nebulous that customers are unwilling to just pay for the event of you doing your black box thingy. And instead, you show us there's a real outcome, and then you get paid for it. And that'll make a big difference in that integration, which, by the way, Dave, is basically a key part of it is creating a system, is getting the systemic job done to be able to maintain whatever and sustain whatever that transformation was.
Well, and I think it's an interesting example, because when we ask people, if you were hiring a company for transformation, would you want the support to be mostly digital or mostly human in terms of delivery? And there was some bias toward human delivery, but this was 2 years ago, and I can promise you it would be right down the center now.
And it's something that AI is actually very good at.
Exactly. That's where I'm going with this. Like, the gaps, the hard things about delivering on transformation actually are made so much easier by current improvements in technology and the availability of it. You can go in your ChatGPT right now and get it to create code for you as a non-coder that will allow you to encapsulate the experience. So if you don't do it, it's just lazy.
Right. There are,
it is, or it's that you don't know how important it is. Which brings me to my next question, Dave, as we start to wrap up. Who should read this book?
I think Joe has regularly argued that if you're in education, if you're in finance, if you're in physical well-being of any type, you should be reading this. This
Healthy,
is
Wealthy,
obvious
Wise
kind of stuff.
Read it. Yep.
The issue is there's a lot of companies that don't see themselves as it being in one of those three categories.
And they really are.
But the problem is that to a large degree, if you're focused on families and individuals and helping them to improve their lives, then you need to at least know how your offering supports transformation. You may not actually be delivering transformation, but you may be support for transformation in some way, shape, or form. And you need to know that that's where value is headed. So how do you input into that type of value? I
think too, the reader is well beyond just the corporate audience. I think this should be read by the creator economy, because most creators are already in the transformation economy but don't know how to do it well, and to really realize the value of the work that they're doing. And again, as we talked about in our last episode, things have become so decentralized that these creators really have a tremendous influence over outcomes. And I think they need to better understand that potential and that responsibility, of course.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it's exciting. Joe, everything you predicted happened in the experience economy. And so your track record is fantastic. Right now, we're living in a period where it's all about AI and artificial intelligence. But you watch, and I'm already seeing articles on this, AI is going to become the baseline requirement pretty quickly, where people are going to say, yeah, you can do AI for me, but what can you do beyond AI for me? And I think they're going to expect superpowers. They're going to expect transformation. So we're on the right path, and stay tuned, people. We'll keep you ahead of the we'll keep you ahead of the curve if you're paying attention.
Well said. Thanks for listening. And Joe, huge congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.